Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. I'm Siddharth Zarabi. On today's show, we are going to discuss some statements. And those statements are, it's lonely at the top. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Fail fast, fail cheap. If it's not broken, don't fix it. People leave people, not organizations. Now, how often have you heard people use these to make a point? Management at all levels gets this advice from consultants and management gurus. But do these management truisms hold every year? Or are they myths that need to be examined in today's rapidly changing world? Ashook Soota, the founding chairman of Happiest Minds Technologies and the founding chairman of MindTree, has written a book that challenges many management myths and inspires you to question them. And he joins me now on the show. Welcome, Ashok. It's good to have you. Not discussing IT, not discussing results, but discussing this book. And I really want to start by asking you to tell our viewers what inspired you to write this book and this attempt to bust management myths.
Yeah, well, Siddharth, nice to speak to you. And I'm glad you've chosen to focus on a subject which is not IT for a change. And so the reason is that even as I've gone through my career, many of these things, obviously, as you said, you keep hearing them. And I believe that many of them lead people into wrong decisions. And it is with a view to spurring thought, questioning status quo, examining things from fundamentals, that I felt that these myths needed to be busted so that anybody who's applying their mind to, let's say, a decision on culture, for example, or strategy, or how do you plan your new venture, and looking at fail fast, fail cheap, I think these are disastrous decisions they could make if they were to believe that. And it is from that angle that I felt I needed to write a book. I should also share with you that I brought in a co-author. And it's amazing how and when I brought the co-author. He and I were speaking at an event together in Bangalore. We were both selling our respective books at a stall after our talks. Both the books were doing exceedingly well. I had Entrepreneurship Simplified, and he had another book uh, where he was presenting the other point of view, which means you don't start with just a view, but he presented the opposite view also. That stirred the thought of saying, because when you bust a myth, it's not that I'm saying, hey, I'm right and the other party was wrong. You do need the other point of view. And that is how a year or two later I met Peter in Toronto and said, how would you like to write, let's do this book together. And of course, he immediately jumped at it. I should also add that we brought in a third writer, which is very unusual. And that's Sandhya Mendonca, who's one of your own tribe, and you probably know her well enough. Uh, we had frankly put the book on park and hold during the pandemic. When we resumed after the pandemic, firstly, I myself had got very busy with SCAN, my new not-for-profit medical research trust, as well as Happiest Health, which I've again started. I certainly felt we needed help. And also, there was a very important angle. It was not just enough to get two views, my view or Peter's view. We needed third party views. So, this is where Sandhya came into the picture and, in a sense, went to some pretty, I'd say, learned and wise people, whether it was Nanda Nilekani or Sandeep Meni and so on, and elicited their views on these topics. That helped us to bring, I'd say, a very holistic view towards these bits that we are keen on busting.
All right, let's take up some of these key statements, these so-called truisms, and try and break them down, because there must be several viewers who are either in management or aspire to be managers, students included. The first one, it's lonely at the top. Is this a truism that holds good forever?
You know, I don't think that that's a truism which has ever held good. I think it's anybody who feels is really lonely at the top is not doing it right. You know, I've now been a CEO or higher for 40 years of my life. So I can certainly say I'm well equipped or well qualified to speak about this one. The reason why people say it's lonely at the top, they may say is because the buck stops at you. And therefore, you're making those decisions alone. But that's never really the case. Uh, Invariably, I think if you take decisions, whether large or small, but in a participative manner where you involve people in the decisions, you carry people with your decisions, then it doesn't matter if a thing worked out right or it worked out wrong. You also must remember that as a CEO, you get a lot of credit for work that others did. And to that extent, I actually see this issue of being at the top as a tremendous opportunity. I look at back at my own career and look at the goodwill, the good wishes, the warmth, the endearing, I would say, trust that I've sensed from people I've worked with over the years. Even today, I meet people from Wipro, from MindTree, and obviously, it goes even back to my earlier Sriram days. I may meet them at an airport, or I meet them at a location where they may reach out to me. And I find that sense of warmth endures. It becomes a large family. So where is the scope of being lonely at the top?
Okay, let's take the other one, and this is a personal favorite for me. And when I saw this, latched on to it immediately. This is culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, culture here is obviously the management culture, the company's own way of doing things. It's a mix of several things. It changes from company to company. But why is this truism also not right in your view?
Sure. You know, like all truisms, there's some element of truth in it. And particularly since this one is really attributed to Peter Drucker, we take it up with a little bit of, you may say, seriousness, because you can't be questioning Peter Drucker. He is like God, if you ask me, on the management scene.
Yeah.
Having said that, you know, I think one of the issues with management authors, and here I would include Peter Drucker, is when you're talking of a topic, then that it becomes the most important topic. And therefore, everything else must. So, somebody's talking of implementation, then the whole book will say there's nothing more important, because it doesn't matter if you have the right strategy, if you don't implement, then it's obviously a disaster. I think the danger in that is that you just focus on one thing and say it's more important than the others. What is really relevant is that to succeed, you need to be successful in many areas. Actually, one big weakness can set you back. That's one. Second, I must again tell you, I am a strong believer in culture. Make no mistake. I've created entities after entities which have continuously won awards for being the great places to work in. But I also do realize that if you didn't have the right strategies, you're going to be in deep trouble. And particularly in a fast changing world, those strategies need to be revisited every 2 to 3 years. Your culture is something you build continuously. From time to time, the culture may even turn toxic. Then you need to address the issues like that again. Whereas in strategy, it's based on having differentiators. And today's world, I'd say no differentiator will last for more than 2 or 3 years. It's so competitive. And therefore, you need to keep re examining that strategy to remain successful.
Strategy is usually determined by the top management. It flows down the organization, and then all the execution and the implementation happens. But as far as I understand it, culture may emanate from the top, but it's something that everyone in a company has to adopt. Am I correct in that statement?
Sure. No, I wouldn't agree with you there. I would just say, what is the origin on the way we build the culture in our company? All the companies that I have led, we define a mission statement. So everybody then knows in a very clear, succinct way that this is what the company is about. For example, even in Happiest Health, we have defined our mission as better knowledge, better health. Then you describe a 5 year vision, and you get everybody aligned behind that vision. And finally, you have the values which should never change. In MindTree, we had what we called as the class values: caring, learning, achieving, sharing, and social responsibility. In the case of Happiest Minds, also, we've had a wonderful thing called Smiles. Now, they then The reason we have acronyms, I must tell you again, is very important because they become easy to internalize. And then you have to keep emphasizing them at all times. It's not top down or bottom up. Same thing applies to strategy. It's all done collectively. In fact, strategy more than culture, if you ask me, really comes bottom up. You get strategic plans, you get business units giving their strategies. In our business, where technology drives strategy, you get a technology note that emanates from the people who know the technology, the way it's going. Then it gets pieced together. Whereas culture is all over, it's everywhere at every level. It's what we all live by and stand for. And all of that, the foundation is the mission, vision, and values.
Absolutely, and it would be good for people watching this to try and adopt that. Fail fast, fail cheap. I think this applies to our startups along with every other company, but particularly for startups, because in startups there's also a belief to keep iterating and reiterating till you finally get the sort of best mix from a business outcome point of view. Explain this.
Sure.
What's your view on this particular truism?
Yeah, you know, this particular myth emanated out of Silicon Valley, where typically there are a lot of startups, money is also easy to come by, but yet at the same time they're saying, hey, limit your losses. Therefore, don't do something and blow up a ton of money. I think that's the worst way of starting a business, thinking that it may fail. I believe you must start a business with the firm belief that it has to succeed. You may change your strategies all over. You may zoom in and zoom out in terms of re strategizing, but it's still the same business. And you start this, when you do this, the very important thing is you've got to visualize how much cash you need by the time you are going to break even. And you must know that you have the ability to either start with the cash or raise the cash as you go along. Because then, when you hit into trouble, the world will fold on you. And that the amount of money can be large, make no mistake, it should be large. Why is it that when the dot com boom was going on, there were hundreds of companies which entered in the market? The only one which succeeded and stayed on and did a successful IPO was MindTree. The reason is we started with enough cash. When the dot com bust came, we had enough money to re strategize. We were never saying, hey, we'll shut shop and go away. When you create a company, you're creating careers for people, you're creating a path towards success, you're creating a path towards monetizing the wealth that you're creating for all of your shareholders. And that has to be the goal. And at all costs, that must be the aim. And you must have enough money to be able to achieve that.
Ashok, do you think today's startup entrepreneurs in India and managers need to relearn this particular aspect?
Well, you know, firstly, today there is a booming startup culture. I would say the negative side is the fact that when you set out to create the great so-called unicorns, there seems to be no dearth of money. I mean, nobody's saying fail cheap. I mean, look at the hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into so many of the companies. And then they deliver losses for so many years. And you might say we have swung to an almost opposite extreme where everybody's got this desire to become a unicorn. Tons of money are poured in. I think one private equity player succeeds another private equity player and brings in more money. And I actually believe that the danger has swung to the opposite side, where people say, fine, money is available, we will fund an idea. And we know because we got either first mover advantage or whatever it is they consider, they pour in millions of dollars. Now I'm starting Happiest Health. I'm certainly not keeping either of those two positions in my mind. Neither do I want to think of failing fast and failing cheap. So we're putting in a fair bit of money. But neither have I set my goal at saying, hey, I can go and raise a few $100 million and hope to become a unicorn. And we'll see what happens when profit comes. We've got a goal. We've got to achieve profitability in a finite period of time. I think that is key.
Okay, the next one, viewers, and this one is, if it is not broken, don't fix it. Now, this is something, Ashok, that I would say that in a situation, you can look at it two ways. One, if you have a successful business model and you are continuing down the business, you perhaps don't have an incentive to go ahead and try something new. But it's also in some ways, Ashok, a survival strategy. Why is this something that you have highlighted in your book?
Sure. Well, Siddharth, this is a very interesting one. And this, more than any of the others, actually pertains to the times in which we live. Because change is taking place so fast that if you don't go and be proactive about the future, and you don't get unhappy and say, hey, I've got to make the change before somebody else comes and drives you out of your business. With new competition coming in from multiple sides, you'll get caught literally, I would say, with a, and feel very red faced at the end of that exercise because you've been comfortable in your success without seeing where the changes are coming from. And now change is coming from everywhere. Therefore, you have to anticipate what's happening and institute change even when it looks like things are going wonderfully well. So there have to be new business models, new business streams. All of these have to keep being introduced continuously so that you don't get into this issue of saying, hey, we are doing well, we can continue to coast along with what we have. What a wonderfully successful strategy we have.
Absolutely, and people who have done that in the past have seen the negative impact of going down this path. But let's come to the final one for today's conversation. And viewers, there are many more in this book. In fact, 17 major management principles, so to say, which you can go through in the book. But I want to pick this one up from a human resource perspective. People leave people, they don't leave organizations. Now, I mean, I'm sure you have a point of view on it, but just to tease that question further, I would say that the human dynamic in organizations is perhaps the prime motivator for people to stay on and leave.
Sure. You know, see, I'm a firm believer in the fact that we must create a great place to work, which I think is evident from all the companies I've run and the ratings we've got. And yet, at the same time, it doesn't mean that you won't get attrition. People have careers, they've got ambitions, they will move on. Sometimes the better company that you are will mean that you will be increasing the market value of the people who are working with you. And it's only fair for them to say, why should I not grab an opportunity when it comes in? They may love your company, and yet they will say, hey, I have to move on because I'm getting a better offer outside. I'll give you a comparison. I would say that, you know, for many years, Infosys was the flagship company in the industry. And yet it had a much higher attrition rate than the leader in the company, the largest one, which was sometimes viewed as being, hey, very conservative, not rewarding people very generously, and yet they had the lowest attrition. Now, why was the case? I would say that the market value of the people working in Infosys, because it was seen as being an environment in which people learned, people developed, people grew, enhanced their market value, and therefore they moved on, even while they may have loved the company. I get so many mails virtually everywhere. I've never worked in a place like this. And yet, I feel that now it's time for me to move on. And when that happens, we would always say we wish you the very best in your career. Maybe at some stage our paths can cross again.
Absolutely. Ashook Soota, I thank you on behalf of many managers who would be interested in figuring this out, because managing teams, managing yourself is at all times a challenge. And when business becomes challenging, the economic environment becomes challenging, when technology changes, all of this gets enhanced. And I wish you all the very best for this book and for sparing time with us for this conversation today. Viewers, with that, it's a wrap on this conversation. If you have, thank you very much for watching.